Question number 5. Ron Mark.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Defence and asks, does he stand by all his statements regarding a potential deployment of combat troops to Iraq?
Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Mr Speaker, yes, insofar as they've been accurately reported and not conveniently misinterpreted.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Ron Mark.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister, if no decision has been made to deploy troops, why would combat troops from the 1st Regiment Royal New Zealand Infantry have been told by their superiors to expect to deploy at the end of February or at the beginning of March?
Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Well, Mr Speaker, there is no decision to deploy to Iraq. There has been no instruction to the military around any deployment to Iraq, and I am not responsible for what various army commanders might say to their troops.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Ron Mark.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister, if, as he says, no decision to deploy troops has been made, when does he expect that that decision will be made?
Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Well, Mr Speaker, a question that asks when does someone expect to make a decision about something they haven't made a decision about is not a question at all.
Order. 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 Point of order, the right honourable.
Mr Speaker, with the greatest respect, it is your decision as to whether the question is adequate, not the Minister of Defence, and he should be asked to answer the question.
Well, I'll hear from the Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Mr Speaker, how can I answer a question about making a decision about a decision that hasn't been made? It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Order. The question I allowed, the question was then addressed by the Minister. Does the member have further supplementaries?
Oh, most definitely, Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question, Ron Mark.
So if no decisions have been made, Minister, why then is the Army moving all communications regarding the Iraqi deployment to secure networks and deleting orders previously sent? Or are they just covering the tracks for the Minister for him?
Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Mr Speaker, I know that the Army has their own communication systems that they use. And in fact, they're asking the government at the moment to spend a lot more money giving them new systems so that they can be even better networked. As for the actual keystroke operations day to day, Mr Speaker, I can't answer about that. All I know is there is no government decision, there's been no government instruction to prepare for deployment to Iraq.
A point of order, Mr Speaker.
Point of order, Ron Mark.
Taking your advice previously, I specifically kept this question short and I specifically asked around what is currently happening in the Army, moving communications to secure networks and instructing officers to delete old orders that have already been given.
Order. And I invite the member to, in the future, try and get his questions even shorter. I think that would help, but in this case, if the member goes back and studies the question he's asking about movement of information to secure networks, etc., that question was addressed by the Minister. Supplementary question, Honourable Phil Goff.
Mr Speaker, what is the full extent of planning and preparation being undertaken now with soldiers in New Zealand for potential deployment to Iraq?
Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Mr Speaker, there is no training being undertaken for potential deployment to Iraq, but the member will know from his own time as Minister of Defence that New Zealand military always trains for the contingency they may be asked to do anything.
Supplementary question. Order. Supplementary question, Honourable Phil Goff.
If the Minister's answer to the House just now is correct, why did his spokesperson say on the 2nd of December that the Defence Force has begun, quote, some training and preparation on a contingency basis, end quote, and go on to say this is required quote, to ensure that there is a suitable time to build an effective level of capability should the government decide to deploy.
Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Well, Mr Speaker, as I've said before, the military have about 100 personnel based in the Middle East at any time. And I just answered you by saying that the military do train for... Sorry.
Mr Speaker, the question is not about wider deployment in the Middle East, it's about Iraq, and that's what the Minister's spokesperson was talking about.
Allow the Minister to finish. It was about contingency arrangements that are underway, as I understood the question. Honourable Jerry Brownlee to complete
Mr Speaker, if the question is about a deployment to Iraq, there is no decision to deploy to Iraq, therefore the question can't stand.
Supplementary question, Ron Mark.
An easy one. Does the Minister think it's fairer on the troops, their families and their extended families to confirm they are deploying to Iraq before Christmas, or is he going to hang out and wait till after Christmas?
Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Well, Mr Speaker, the government's made it very clear that we are not sending combat troops to Iraq. We've further said that there will be a small group of personnel looking at the possibility only of partnership capacity building in perhaps potentially in Iraq. But there is no decision. We've received no reports. And even though Mr Mark might think he knows everything because he's got a few mates from his days when he was a storeman in the army, he's just not right.
Order.